Welcome back to the Saturday Scholars College Football Podcast. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. That is Zan. I am Shub, and today we are here to do Week 12 recap. Let's go. Gonzo is not here today, so it'll be just Zan and I. We've been a two-man podcast last few weeks, man. It's just you and Gonzo have been rotating pretty much the last few weeks.
Yep, when life calls, life and work. Unfortunately, it's not a full-time job for us, so we just got to make do with what we got. Sometimes we got to work with one hand tied behind our back. Well, at least all we need is even just one of us to do this thing. We can keep this thing going. So let's get on in it.
Seriously, if I could have both hands freed and not one hand tied behind my back, I feel like this podcast could take off. If all three of us could perform with both hands, I think this podcast would gain some momentum. All right. Well, for those of you listening or watching in, thanks for listening, and let's get to it, man. So I think the place to start here is the Pac-12. Now, there were a handful of good games this weekend. The nightcap I thought was really good. Oregon State, Washington. You had Texas, Iowa State. You had Kansas State over in the other games. And then Florida, Missouri actually came down to the wire too. So the nightcap was actually really fun last week. But I figured we'd start with Oregon State versus Washington. And holy crap, man. Did not think the weather was going to impact that game as much as it did. That was some typical Oregon weather right there. Like that was your Oregon special right there. And Washington got a taste of it. They're, of course, I mean, they're both Pacific Northwest teams, so I'm sure they're used to that. But man, the rain really impacted this game, and you would have thought that it would have favored the team that ended up losing this game. It did not seem to affect the winner as much as you would think.
Yeah, I mean, this was a really good game. First half was really crazy, just from teams absolutely getting caught in the rain quite literally and turning it over just because of the rain. But the second half was nice. It was a little cleaner, a little less rainfall. And it was just a great game all throughout, though, because I really liked what Kalen DeBoer had to say before this game. They asked him about the rainy conditions. He said, well, hey, they got to play in it too. There's no excuse. You know, they're playing in the same conditions we're playing in. So potato. Either way, we got to be ready to go. So, hey, hats off to Washington, man. Oregon State, I mean, the fans really packed the house. The fans, I love the hard hats they have for Build the Dam.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, Oregon State, I mean, I feel for them because, you know, they really wanted to win that. They have something to prove. But, man, good for Washington. Good for Washington.
It was a very good win for Washington, man. I think this kind of speaks to Washington's ability to win games in different fashions, which I feel like we didn't really think they were capable of. You would think maybe they're like a team that, you know, airs it out, heavy air raid, a lot of offense, a lot of scoring. But if you punch them in the mouth, you get a game like this where the weather's all messed up, it's slick, nobody can catch the football. You would think this would be the perfect spot for Washington to get caught napping. This would be the perfect spot for a team like Washington to be vulnerable, and they still figured out a way to win. It's really impressive, man. I'm pretty sure off the top of my head, like Washington is, I think 4-0 or 5-0, I think, in one score games this year. They are kind of 2022 TCU. Gonzo and I talked about that last week. This Washington team kind of feels like last year's TCU in a way. Just the way
I would say this Washington team is much better than last year's TCU team, though. I mean, TCU didn't have the raw talent that Washington has, so.
But I also think Oregon State just, oh man, Oregon State I thought played really well though. I mean,
they did.
They outgained Washington in total yardage. They 317 to 272. They had those 3 turnovers, a 3-1 turnover margin going against Oregon State there. And then if you look at post-game win expectancy, I mean, it says Oregon State should have won this game 69% of the time. And success rate, like I'm looking at these advanced metrics, and that's just like Oregon State 42% success rate overall to Washington's 33. It was a weird game, man. I really thought Oregon State was going to win it there at the end. It seemed like
it did seem like it, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like midway from the third quarter on, Washington could not score, and it looked like Oregon State was destined for a comeback win.
Especially after Washington missed that field goal, and then Oregon State marched down the field and scored. It seemed like there was definitely a shift there. And then as soon as they stopped Washington and got the ball back with 2-3 minutes left, and were driving a little bit, and then tried to run the clock down. That was probably the Achilles heel of it. They were taking a gamble. They were trying to run the clock down so they wouldn't give Washington time to score. But man, kind of backfired, unfortunately. But hey, you can't blame the Bees for taking it. I gotta say, man, I really thought Oregon State was going to pull it out when they were making that final drive, but it was not meant to be.
And
Huskies,
Washington covers.
This might just be their year, yeah.
It does feel like their year. I mean, they got the Apple Cup next week against Wazoo at home, and I mean, Wazoo did finally seem to get back on track. We'll talk about that here in a second, but I still think Washington's got it in the bag. They got that 12-0 season in the bag before you play Oregon. And that's a whole different ballgame, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that when we get to that. So Washington moves on. They cover, and hey, I gotta say, hey, listen, we've been a Washington pod. I've been rooting for the Huskies all year. I will say, for you Husky fans out there listening, I did say thought y'all were going to lose this game. I said I thought you all would lose either Utah or Oregon State, and you didn't. So I'm impressed. That's all I got to say. I am impressed. I did not expect Washington to come out of that stretch unscathed, and they did. So hats off, man. This season's been outstanding. Well, that kind of leads into our next points. We got to talk a little bit of championship game dynamics here because Washington, with this win, they clinched their spot in the Pac-12 championship game. They will be the 1 seed, which doesn't really matter. It means they get to wear the colored jerseys on a neutral field. And their opponents is still yet to be determined.
We'll probably end up being Oregon, but it's interesting because I know where you're going with this shoe.
It is very interesting because there's still one team not named Oregon that can make the Pac-12 championship game. It is not Oregon State. They just got eliminated. It is not Utah. They just got eliminated the other week. It is Arizona. Arizona can still go to the Pac-12 championship game somehow. And the way that Arizona gets there is they would need to win versus Arizona State, of course, in the Territorial Cup, which they should on paper. And then they would need Oregon to lose to Oregon State in the Civil War, which I'd say unlikely, but not totally out of the realm of possibility. Oregon State has had Oregon's number in recent years. So it could happen. I doubt it, but it could happen. And speaking of Arizona, I just got to shout them out, man. I didn't get to watch this game. It was on the Pac-12 network, which is really sad that a freaking ranked matchup is on the Pac-12 network. But Arizona just absolutely splattered Utah 52-18. I picked Arizona to win this game. It was like a coin flip game in terms of the spread. I did not think this would be a splattering. Like, ooh, man, this Arizona team is rolling right now, dude. I'm telling you.
I didn't get eyes on it either because nobody gets eyes on the Pac-12 network. But
nope.
But yeah, man. I mean, Arizona, they are. I mean, Jedd Fisch is probably coach of the year. He won't win it. It'll probably end up going to Lanning or DeBoer if I had to guess. But man, nobody saw Arizona coming. Of all teams, I think they are the most surprising team that came out this season, and up there with Missouri, maybe Louisville, but definitely Arizona being the absolute biggest surpriser for me.
Absolutely. I mean, they got Jade Delora in this game. They had Tatora McMillan, 8 for 116 at Tutty. They had McMillan throwing a pass too. McMillan threw a touchdown pass on a trick play. That dude's going to be a first-round pick. I just can't wait for it. And he went somewhere where he was going to play as a true freshman, as a high 4-star recruit. And I think he's reaping the benefits. So I hope to see more of that. But anyhow, shout out to Arizona, man. You just love to see that. And they can still get the Pac-12 championship game. So in terms of the rest of the Pac-12, we talked about the scenarios. Oregon, all they have to do is simply win versus Oregon State in the Civil War. They're a 14.5-point favorite at home as of tonight. And then you have some other scores in the Pac-12 that don't affect the championship game, but figured we just talk about this really quick. UCLA 38, USC 20. Who saw this one coming? I think you picked UCLA on the spread. I think we all picked USC.
Yeah. I mean, I felt like there was going to be a little bit of quit in USC, knowing that they can't play for much or not the aspirations that they were looking for. But I also didn't feel that UCLA was going to be ready to play, considering that Chip Kelly is on the hot seat, or maybe he has already been fired but still coaching. There's been word of that too. So that's the only reason I didn't go full-blown UCLA on this. But yeah, man, it's interesting. And I hear a lot of people like, oh, Caleb Williams is overrated. Oh, this. Caleb Williams still played a hell of a game. I don't know why people like. It's not his fault that his defense gives up 38 plus every single game, and basically, all you have to do is just bottle up Caleb Williams. There's just no support. So
I
I don't
didn't
know. I don't like that narrative that's coming out of people saying that Caleb Williams is like not good.
stupid.
Has nothing to do with that. USC is just not a good team. Without Caleb Williams, this team probably isn't even bowling. So just saying.
Seriously, his offensive line for USC this year has been bad. It's regressed from last year. The defense, I don't know. I didn't watch this game, but just by judging by the highlights and just by the final score, it looked like the defense just checked out. Like definitely the rest of the team quit. I mean, they don't have a defensive coordinator. They have an interim DC. So it's like they just gave up on the year, man. And yeah,
I love how you said that. I love how you said that because as an Oklahoma State fan, a certain linebacker, Mason Cobb for USC, said he left Oklahoma State and he really loved playing at USC because they keep on fighting. They don't give up. Unlike his last school where they wanted to give up. And it just seems like one, the irony that he quit on his team to go to a different team, and then two, his team is on complete quit alert, as you said yourself. I didn't even prompt you for that. I didn't even prompt you for that. You just came up with that on your own. That is a completely unbiased, objective thought right there. So
it's
I just like to
fact.
point out the absolute hypocrisy in that. And Mason Cobb, you get what you deserve. You absolutely went from being a potential NFL linebacker to probably, maybe going as undrafted free agent, playing like 2 games on practice squad, and then that's it.
Oh man, I love it.
Sit my
I love it.
tea.
Sip your tea, man. Where's the Kermit meme? Yep. Hey, there's a lot of players I think that left Oklahoma State last year that definitely are in the similar situations, except for Jabbar Muhammad.
Except
I
for
think
Jabbar
Jabbar Muhammad
Muhammad.
won. Jabbar
He's going
Muhammad,
to be like a first or second round pick. He is.
we didn't talk about him, but like if you like, he absolutely dominated. Like he's like legitimately. I don't think you rarely get to say like, yeah, this defensive player like single handedly won this team the game. But like if you replace Jabbar Muhammad with Washington's next corner up, I think like Oregon State might have won that game. He
Oh,
absolutely
for sure.
balled out.
I mean, Jabbar Muhammad had like 5 deflections. I mean,
Yeah,
he's
and he had
all
two
over the place.
interceptions. Like he was
Yeah, he was
insane.
all over the place.
Yeah, we
Anytime they
forgot to
threw it at
mention
him,
that.
it was dangerous. Yeah, he's going to get drafted very highly.
Oh yeah, his stock is bumped up a lot this year, but we forgot to mention that. Also, really quick, I know we already talked about Utah, but Cam Rising announced that he's coming back next year.
Utah and Arizona are going to be deadly in their first year in the Big 12. The Big 12 is going to be interesting because I think UCF will get a little bit better. I think UCF's been humbled a little bit. They'll come to the table next year a little more focused. Jalen Daniels is coming back for Kansas. If long as their head coach doesn't get poached, they're looking really crazy. Especially if their OC Koltunicki doesn't get poached either. Kansas looks like a very formidable opponent. Then you have Kansas State, who's always formidable, and they've got some really good players, really good young players at Kansas State that I think are going to be a problem for a while. So Texas Tech, they're bringing in a 5-star wide receiver, all kinds of. This league, man, I know they're losing because of OU, but the Big 12 is actually kind of exciting. I think there's going to be a lot of competition coming up next year. It's going to be a really interesting league to look at.
Oh, it will be. But back to the Rising situation, like first of all, next year is going to be his 7th year of college. So just think about that. And two, so he didn't play it all this year. You have Bryson Barnes and Nate Johnson that played all year. They're kind of competing to be the heir apparent. And then all of a sudden Rising's like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm coming back next year." I what's Utah going to do about that quarterback situation? I mean, one, if all three of them stay, one, like Utah's QB room next year will be absolutely loaded. So that's good for them. But like chances are, if you're one of those two guys, you're like, what the hell, man? Like, get out of here. Like you're going to be at 25 next year. Like, get out of here. One of them might transfer. It seems kind of a weird situation to me, but
I mean, we'll see. They get a car to stay over there in Utah, so we'll see if that's enough to keep them there.
yeah, that is true.
And they could be telling Bryson Barnes, "Hey, man, once Cam, plays 7, 8, 9 years, I mean, we'll give you your shot." So we already seen what you can do. But yeah. So let's move on, man. Bounce back. Wazoo 56 over Colorado 14. Coach Prime is not having a fun time over there in Colorado. And that's another intriguing thing about the Big 12. You got to bring in Coach Prime to the Big 12. So Yeah, man, it's gonna be really interesting.
Their
I
off
really like
season
to
is going to
see.
be very interesting. I am very interested to see like
I'm
how
looking
their off
forward to
season
seeing
plays
what
out.
the portal is going to do this offseason because I feel like it's obviously going to be crazy, but I feel like it's not going to be nearly as many players that enter the portal this cycle because people are kind of learning their lesson. One, the NCAA is blocking people from immediate eligibility after one transfer, and then two, a lot of people are realizing, oh man, from like the last 2 3 years, a lot of people that enter that portal don't come out of it. So I feel like we might see it slow down a little bit this cycle, but we're still going to see some big names in there, and I'm kind of curious to see what's going to happen.
And it seems like there's some internal issues going on there in Colorado, which I mean that's not surprising, but yeah, it definitely doesn't seem like that team is its stock is down right now. Yeah, leave it to Colorado to get Wazoo to end their what that was their like 7 game losing streak. I'm pretty sure they started out 4-0, then they lost 7 in a row or something like that, 6 in a row. Leave it to Colorado to bring Wazoo out of their funk, but makes the Apple Cup at least somewhat interesting next week. All right, let's switch gears. Let's head out to the Big 12, man. So few games we got to cover here, and mainly a lot of these games. It's really the Big 12 championship game race, which is what's the big deal in this conference right now. The Big 12 is still very just not clear about what the conference tiebreakers are. Like, I legitimately don't know what the Big 12 tiebreakers are. Like, I tried to look at stuff before we recorded, and I tried to find on the internet like any sort of articles that could tell me like every single scenario of next week and who wins what, team X wins, what does that mean for team Y and Z, like who gets in this scenario. I found one thing from 24/7, but it doesn't paint the full picture. But anyhow, those teams that are in play, Texas is one of them. They beat Iowa State 26-16. You want to talk about players returning for next year? Quinn Ewers announced later last week that he's returning for the 2024
Not a
season.
surprise at all. Not a surprise at all.
In a year where there's going to be a loaded quarterback class coming out for the NFL, I think that's probably a smart move for him. So
Plus,
I
even if it wasn't a loaded class, I don't think he would go in the first 2 rounds. I don't think so.
He definitely seems like he needs more development. I would say he's not like there yet. He hasn't progressed like a whole lot this year from last year. But
he's slowly getting better, but we'll see how he does next year.
He is. But yeah, this was a little bit of a rock fight. Texas was able to cover that spread for all of us because of a blocked PAT that they returned for 2, which ended up being a 3-point swing. The spread was -8. Texas wins by 10. That basically was the spread clincher right there. So it worked in our favor. But
it's amazing how these things work.
It really is, man. It's
always
pins and needles.
Crazy.
It is pins and needles. Iowa State, I thought Iowa State put up like as good as a fight as they possibly could. Like that was Iowa State's like best effort. And Gonzo and I said on the podcast last week, we all picked Texas. We were like, come on, man. There's no way Iowa State actually wins this game. Like, we just thought there's a cap here. There's a cap here. But
I mean, when the Texas defensive lineman is the size of 2 of Iowa State's offensive linemen, I mean, and you don't have much of a shot there. So
I've watched Texas this year a lot, but like for some reason yesterday I just saw like T'Vondre Sweat. Like, I knew he was an animal. Like, I knew he's a monster, but like I didn't. He just like the dude is freaking. He's an avatar, man. Like
he is massive.
He was the one that blocked that PAT.
Like his shoulders, like everything, like that dude is massive.
He's like a bona fide first round pick, right? He's got to be.
I don't know what his stock is, but there's no way he's not going to get drafted.
1,000% he will, just because of his sheer size. And like, I mean, it's absurd that he is. I couldn't get over it. Anyways, Kansas State versus Kansas, man. I was able to watch a little bit of this one on the side. I know you have some thoughts on this one. To me, Kansas lost this game by 4 points, but to me, Kansas was more impressive than Kansas State was. I mean, this was Kansas playing a third-string QB.
Amazingly coached. To go out there and compete with Kansas State, and I know that they've lost the Sunflower Showdown like 14, 15 years in a row.
15.
Something crazy like that. Yeah. And look, man, I can't help but think if Bean was healthy or Jalen Daniels is healthy, they come out with the dub in this one. They had to adapt in such a major way to play against a very, very well-coached Kansas State team. And hats off to them, man. It looked like they might win it for a little bit, but ultimately Kansas State is just too good of a team, too well-coached for you to go in there with a third-string quarterback and beat them over the head with a loaf of bread and win the game. It's just not going to happen. But man, Lance Leipold almost did it. that just shows you how good of a coach he is. And that's why if I'm Kansas, I'm kind of scared. I'm looking around the NCAA right now, and I'm seeing a lot of coaching openings coming up at programs that I would argue are more prestigious and can pay more. So I'm sitting there thinking, oh God, I better hang on to my boy Lance. Like if we lose Lance, we are screwed. So
I completely agree. And you talk about Kansas playing up for this game and probably being the better team. Do you know what the post game win expectancy was? Do you want to take a guess?
I'm gonna guess it favors Kansas. Otherwise, you wouldn't ask me.
It does. Yes, you're right. I usually when I ask, it means that it favors the team that lost. But how by what percentage do you think?
65.
Oh boy, wait till you hear this. It says Kansas should have won this game 99% of the time. That might be
Yeah,
a record, dude.
your analytics, like whoever comes up with these, it's got to be BS. There's no way.
Kansas,
Because
okay,
I feel
Kansas
like every
outgained
week
K-State.
we're on this pod and you're like, you know what the post win expectancy was? 89% this team, but they lost.
Well, let's be real here. I usually only point out the exceptions. I don't point it out when it says, 90% of the time, yeah, this team won, and which they should have
I
won.
know,
I
I
don't
know. I'm
mention
just pulling
that.
your leg. I'm just pulling your leg.
I mean, dude, Kansas outgained Kansas State in total yards by nearly 70. Kansas had 3 turnovers to only 1. I was watching that game. I thought Kansas was the better team for a majority of it. Like I wasn't fully paying attention, but yeah, I don't know. Kansas State just won because of
Kansas had
turnovers
a
pretty
good
much.
lead in this game. Like
They
Kansas, it
did.
really looked like they were taking control of it. But K State, man, like you just can't let them hang in there. They're too dangerous.
No, and it's just like you said, it just speaks to the fact that Lance Leipold can scheme up 27 points against Kansas State with a third string quarterback that's still like threw 2 picks and was kind of bad. I mean, that's him and Colton-Nicky, dude. Colton-Nicky, the OC. Oh, they're hidden gems, man. They are hidden gems for a big program just sitting there to poach. But it seems like they are getting overlooked. But we'll see. We'll see. Well, how about Oklahoma State, Houston? Now, it probably was a good thing. I don't know if you were here. You weren't here last week, obviously, to talk about the UCF disaster, the Citronaut massacre.
Yeah,
But
the monsoon massacre.
yeah, I had my thoughts on that game. I'm sure you listened to the pod. I was not very happy. I mean, but like this team in the first quarter and most of the first half, this looked like a disaster. And then from then on, Oklahoma State just dominated Houston and won this game.
I mean, it looked like it was going to be a UCF game all over again. But the thing that really changed the tide in this, because Houston was driving, man. I think it was 23-9, if I'm not mistaken. Houston was driving, about to score again, and then get the ball back out of half. Wow. Like that would have been nail in the coffin. But Donovan Smith threw an interception, and Oklahoma State never looked back from there. It gave them just enough momentum to down the field, score, and just take control.
Brennan Presley with a huge day, 15 for 189. Love to see Brennan Presley getting involved. It's about time.
Yeah,
He was due.
he almost broke the school record for receptions in the game.
He had 15 of them, man, as I just said. He was due for sure. Yeah, this was the Oklahoma State that I think we've been seeing in that 5 to 6 week stretch from the South Alabama game, or I should say the Iowa State game onward, between them and UCF. That was the Oklahoma State team in the second half that we've been used to seeing. And in terms of them getting to Arlington to the Big 12 championship game, so I was able to sort of break this down as well as I could with the information we have. So basically, this is it in a nutshell. Big 12 championship game scenarios. Texas is 7-1 in conference play. They're alone in first place right now. Texas is simply in with a win versus Texas Tech. Like they win, they're in. Pretty simple. They can still lose and get in, but it's not fully guaranteed. But they're like 99% likely to get in. And then Oklahoma State, they need to win versus BYU, and they need Texas to win as well to keep the group of teams that Oklahoma State has those tiebreakers on in the same grouping. So that way Oklahoma State has their tiebreaker wins over K-State and Oklahoma applied here. And then you have OU who can get in with a win versus TCU. They need Texas to win as well, and they would need Oklahoma State to lose. So obviously they would need Oklahoma State to get out of their way in the tiebreakers so Bedlam does not apply against them. And then you have Kansas State who can still get in, They need to win versus Iowa State and Farmageddon, and they need Oklahoma and Oklahoma State to both lose. So there's still a chance. Kansas State fans are saying, you're telling me there's still a chance, albeit very, very unlikely.
So, what if Oklahoma State loses and Texas loses? I mean, what if Oklahoma State wins and Texas loses? Because the scenario says Oklahoma State's in with a win over BYU plus a Texas win. What if Texas loses and
See,
Oklahoma State beats BYU?
that's where I got confused as well. And I think it has to do with the fact that Texas has wins over Kansas State, but then OU also has a win over Texas. So Oklahoma State and Texas haven't played, but if you bring Texas down into that grouping, all of a sudden OU has the Red River win and a win over Iowa State. If Iowa State were to win, that can be applied. So I honestly don't know, man. Like, this is where it gets muddy. Like there's nothing, I couldn't find any information as to like specific scenarios of like every single possible scenario that could happen next week. Because I want to know like detail for detail, every single possible scenario.
The rules are so poorly written by the Big 12 conference. After this season, they really need to get that figured out.
They really do. It was nice before because last year it was just a 10-team conference. So it was a full round robin. Everybody played everybody. So it was pretty clean. Everybody played everybody. So the tiebreakers, line up. But this year, now that, some teams don't play some teams. So now it's like a daisy chain, like, oh, this team played that team, but they didn't play this team. And they played them, but they didn't play this team. It's kind of all over the place. And yeah, I really don't know. I looking for information, but couldn't find it. But gave you the gist. Texas probably in at the end of the day. Oklahoma State just beat BYU. I think you're probably in. Like, those probably going to happen, right? I say probably, but
you never know what you're going to get with Oklahoma State. That's what I figured out.
Well, before we move on, I'll flip this question on you. Gun to your head right now. Who's in the Big 12 championship game?
Gun to your who?
I said if I put a gun to your head right now, tell me who's in the Big 12 championship game.
Oklahoma State, Texas.
Yeah, it's got to be Oklahoma State, Texas. Like, it's got to be.
And it would be so amazing if, look, as an Oklahoma State fan, it would be so amazing, like sack emptying, like for a whole decade, if you beat OU and Texas and win the Big 12 championship in the year to send them both out as losers to the SEC and take the crown, and they can't say, oh, well, you won the Big 12 when we weren't there. I mean, like, it's too perfect, man. Like, this would be the best year. This would make up for so many shortcomings as an Oklahoma State fan that we have endured the last 10 years. So if we can pull it off this year, oh man, I don't even know what to say.
It definitely would be 100%. I didn't throw this in the notes, but really quick, TCU with an absolute beatdown of Baylor. David Aranda,
so bad.
What do you think about David Aranda right now? Do you think they should let go of him, or what do you think? It's a tough situation.
I don't know what his contract situation looks like, but I don't know. I feel like Baylor might give him one more year, and if that year starts out bad, he might get let go midseason. But we'll see, man.
I mean, they were saying all Dave Aranda had to do was just make sure Baylor doesn't like get blown out in these last two games, and well, he's gotten blown out in the first one. So, it's ugly, man. I don't know what's going to go on there, but anyways, let's head on to the ACC.
Grass is green over there, huh, Don Richardson? Just the jerseys anyway. Just the jerseys are greener, I guess.
I mean, JPR is that TCU might not even make a bowl game, and then the team he left might be playing in the Big 12 championship game. We can go on and on. All right, ACC. Let's talk some ACC. Louisville 38, Miami 31. Hey, listen, Miami put up a good fight. I was all over Louisville. We all were all over Louisville. Sharp money was on Louisville. I had Louisville +1, actually. I thought Miami was definitely on quit alert. They definitely played a little bit better than I would have expected, I guess. But the big storyline here is with this win, Louisville has clinched their spot in the ACC title game, and it's going to be Louisville versus Florida State. So were you able to get eyes on this? Any takeaways from this Louisville-Miami game?
I did actually watch the fourth quarter of this game. Louisville looks better than I give them credit for, but I think the real thing is Miami really fought. Tyler Van Dyke made some really good throws. I can understand why people love him in the NFL space, even though he hasn't been the most productive that he's been in his career. But I like one prime example. I don't know if it was a late third or the fourth quarter. Tyler Van Dyke rolled out and he just flicked it. Like it just looks like he just flicked it so effortlessly. Thing goes 40 yards and it's completion, like to the sideline. I mean, like it was such a great throw. And I was thinking that's NFL. That's NFL QB right there. That's NFL QB stuff. The only thing is that I just don't know what it is with Miami. Like they always seem to have the quote unquote talent to be a good team, but they always fall short. Louisville is the beneficiary of this. And look, you play in Miami and it is a away game, but anytime you play in Miami, it's not a true away game. It's more like a neutral site game because Miami only packs about 25% of the stadium. So, I mean, that's the disadvantage of playing in an NFL stadium. I'll say that much. But yeah, man,
They took some
it
heat
was,
on social media for this stadium like hardly being packed.
yeah, man. I mean, big game Brom, man. Big game Brom. Like he shows up. Louisville might mess around and win the ACC now that Jordan Travis is down.
I mean, they might. And you basically got to my point. Louisville is going to play a Florida State team that will be Jordan Travisless. And yeah, dude, I mean, who the hell was actually watching this game? I don't think anybody was watching Florida State versus North Alabama, but North Alabama got out to a 13-0 lead, I believe, 13-3 lead, and we were like, "Yo, you see this? Like, you see what's going on here?" And I remember I like put it
They're
in,
up 13-0.
yeah, I remember I put in our group chat like the score, and then I go on the Twitter like, "Okay, what's going on here?" And then as soon as I do that, I got the notification Jordan Travis exit on the cart, and I was like, "Oh no." And yeah, it's bad, man. I feel listen, man. I'm a Florida Gator. I'm a Gator through and through. I bleed orange and blue, but like I feel really bad for Jordan Travis, man. And I do feel bad for Florida State. Like this season couldn't be going any better for them in terms of the stars aligning for them to get to the playoff. And this might be the ultimate backbreaker of what should be a special season for them. I feel really bad for them. Um, I don't know if I'll feel bad for them on Saturday, but I do feel bad for them on the whole,
That is
and
true.
especially Jordan
They still got to
Travis.
get through the Gators. I mean, their season could end right then and there. I think they can still go to the ACC title game, but like, let's be real, they're not playing for the ACC title game. They want to go to the Natty.
Exactly. And if you lose to Florida, I mean, Florida State's schedule is just not the beef's just not there. Like Clemson didn't live up to the billing, Miami didn't live up to the billing, like the ACC did not live up to the billing. It did not carry its weight underneath FSU. And I mean, Louisville, I know they're ranked high. They're ranked in the top 10, but like I don't think you can't like value Louisville as like, oh, they be like a true like legitimate top 10 team. You know what I mean? Um,
Louisville's like the best of the worst. Like, they're the beneficiaries of very average at best football. But the thing is, Louisville has been good enough to beat those teams, so there's at least some credit there. I mean, they're definitely a top 25 team. So I think they're a top 15 team? No, but do I think they're a top 25 team? Definitely, most definitely.
you want to talk about teams that have lucked out on their schedule? Like, I don't think I can remember off the top of my head a team lucking out on the timing of their schedule more than Louisville. Because first of all, Louisville got a very favorable scheduling draw just by the ACC giving them their schedule on paper, and then the fact of when they played these teams is even more insane. Like they played Duke when Riley Leonard was like completely out and not even healthy. They played Duke. If they had played Duke earlier in the year, Duke probably beats them. They're gonna be playing Florida State when Florida State's not gonna have Jordan Travis in the ACC title game, and then they also played Miami after Miami like basically quit on the season. I mean, the timing of when Louisville has played everybody has been insane. I feel like that's why they are where they are. I mean,
It's
this
the
team
perfect
also lost to
storm for
Pitt.
them. And now Jordan Travis is going down. They might win the ACC because
They
all
might
the cards, all the dominoes fell just in the perfect fashion.
seriously though. I mean, this team might win an ACC championship. It's absolutely nuts. But yeah, they still got to get through Kentucky, which I don't know if they. We'll see about that. But
I said preseason, like I think they're going to beat Kentucky, so I'm sticking to it.
it seems like it's trending that way right now. But We shall see. That
It's
spread's
it's a
only a
battle of
7-point
snake oil
spread.
salesmen, so we'll see.
The snake oil showdown.
Who's got the best product, man? Who's the best salesman here?
But yeah, if you Miami is 2-5 in ACC play. Can you believe that? They are 2-5 in ACC play. Like Miami is legitimately like they're underneath Boston College and Georgia Tech and Syracuse and Virginia Tech. Like they are below all those teams in the standings. Oh man. Cristobal's been a disaster, man. Like yeah, it's enough
Honestly,
said.
I think just with the culture that Miami is trying to get, they're trying to get back to the whole U of the 2000s, which honestly isn't even doable now with the regulations and the way the game is played and all the penalties. And it's not doable. I feel like Miami keeps trying to grasp that whole identity and culture. And then it doesn't help that you live in Miami and then you pay all these kids a ton of money and let them live in Miami. Oh man. And then all the I forget the dude's name, but there's like a huge Miami booster who
Oh
basically
yeah,
just
the lawyer.
gives them so much money. Yeah, gives the players so much money. And honestly, if you're an 18-year-old, you're in Miami and you got millions of dollars, are you going to be focused on football? I don't think
No,
so.
no, not
And
at
I think
all.
that's what's going on with Miami.
Yeah, exactly. They're trying to bring back the flash and it's just not working. They tried to do it multiple times now. All the flash, all the spice, all the money. It ain't working. But really quick, a couple noteworthy scores. I thought Clemson takes out UNC. UNC drops 31-20 to Clemson. Not really that surprising of a game. I was able to watch this one through and through. Clemson honestly really like controlled this whole game. Like UNC got a score at the end to make it look a lot closer than it actually was. But hey, Clemson, I'll give them credit. They're playing better. Like Klubnik is playing a little bit better than he was at the beginning of the year. So I will give him credit for that. They're still not amazing by any means. And then we got to bring up this one, man. Our Duke Blue Devils dropped it to Virginia. And Virginia now has 3 wins.
It just
And
shows that Duke is a different team without Riley Leonard, man. But please God, Virginia, don't win another game. You got to lose that last game for me because I'm trying to sit on that under. Same for Stanford, man. They're both sitting there at 3 wins. Luckily, Stanford played Notre Dame, so I'm really teetering on those two unders.
you need to hope that Notre Dame does not check out. But yeah, dude, Anthony Calandria for Virginia, the backup quarterback, like he's actually like kind of good. I
He's been better than Tony Muskett.
easily and yeah, they should have made that move earlier, or else that win total would have been dead by now. But we'll see. They play Virginia Tech, so hopefully you get that under for your wallet. And I think we all need Duke to win. We need Duke to win this last game versus, I believe they played Georgia Tech. I think it's either
That's
Georgia
a
Tech
tough
or
one.
it is a tough one. We thought this Duke over was like a slam dunk, and now they might not even get it. They might push if they lose again. It's what a disaster, man.
Riley Leonard, man. I mean, you lose your quarterback; it's a pretty important position. So
I mean, it's sad, man. We were so high on Duke, but anyhow, let's head on out to the SEC. Georgia rolls over Tennessee 38-10.
no shockers there.
Do you think it was going to be that bad? Like I thought Tennessee would play a little bit better.
I think it was going to be close.
The spread was only 10, and I took Georgia. I took my fair share of Georgia with personal money. I also took a first quarter over on DK with a boost, so which that hit as well. Like, man, I am absolutely killing it, man. DK is going to ban me because I'm like legitimately like I think I'm like 6 out of my last 7 in terms of hitting these boosts in the big games. I'm most of it's luck, but I feel like I'm these games are playing out exactly as I'm kind of expecting them to, and it's reflecting. But anyhow, yeah, I mean, dude, Georgia's rolling right now, dude. Carson Beck's playing really well. Like Carson Beck's playing like a top 10 QB in the country to me. And if you look at the rest of the country, you're looking at that and you're looking at Georgia right now, you're like, oh, like that's not good. Like Georgia, I think, is right now the best team in the country. If the playoff was right now, I think Georgia would win the Natty.
They probably are going to three-peat.
I mean, they
But we'll
probably
see.
are. Yeah. Alabama might have something to say about that, but I don't know, man. I don't know.
Alabama, and I think honestly, hot take, I think Oregon's the best team in the country right now. I think
Really?
it's Oregon.
I said that a few
Hot
weeks
take.
ago, but
Hot
I
take. I
changed
think
into
it's Oregon.
Georgia.
I think Oregon
Yeah.
and Georgia could very well be the Natty. Like that would be a great game.
Well, to play devil's advocate to myself, Tennessee also did get like blown out by Missouri last week, and they also got blown out by Georgia. So maybe that win doesn't look quite as impressive. Tennessee, by the way, why is Tennessee still ranked in the top 25? Like they've gotten blown out in the last 2 weeks by 4 touchdowns.
Because
They
they're
lost to
Tennessee.
Florida. They lost to Florida earlier in the year when Florida's not even a bowl team. Like how the hell is Tennessee ranked?
It's because they're
But
Tennessee.
it's yeah. But
SEC
anyways,
bias.
speaking of Florida, man, good gravy, man.
I didn't see this one, but I know you got good eyes on it, and I did see how this ended.
Yep.
I'll let you go on your little rant. Hit me with it, Shub.
Florida lost to Missouri 33-31. I thought Florida, especially late in that game in the fourth quarter, they completely dominated Missouri. It looked like Florida was going to win, and then the defense just pulled an absolute masterclass of how to like choke and lose the game. Florida, we had them 4th and 17 at the 50-yard line with 36 seconds left. 4th and 17, like all you got to do is just make sure Theo Weiss and Luther Burden are covered and, drop like 8 and make sure those two guys are covered. And they did not do that. They just said, oh, Luther Burden, 20 yards, here you go. And then Missouri goes on to win the game. And yeah, I just pathetic, dude. Florida,
Yeah.
we're playing well, like we're hanging in on some of these games, but we just can't finish. We don't know how to, like, the coaching honestly is not good. Like the game management coaching, like situationally, players knowing what to do in certain situations and tight games. Don't do this. Make sure you don't run out of bounds in this situation, et cetera, et cetera. All like the close game management stuff. This coaching staff is just not doing it. They just are failing to get to the players. I mean, Billy Napier's a great recruiter, and Florida's obviously like shelling out, dishing out a lot of money. Billy Napier's a great recruiter as well. They're doing well on that front, but they're kind of turning into like Miami. I feel like with like this is like Cristobal game management. I feel like that's what it is.
Poor game management, but I will say I think Florida's ceiling is much higher than Miami's. I think you give them 2 more years of the way they're recruiting now, and I think Florida, because I mean, like you said, Florida's there. They're competing. They're just not getting over the hump in some of these matchups. I think Florida isn't, honestly, I don't think Florida is that far away from being an 8-9 win team. You just can't have your best player be a Ricky Pearsall. I mean, Ricky Pearsall's not a scrub, but it's not like, who else do you have that's really sticking out? I mean, the whole offense is Pearsall, basically, or the whole passing offense anyway. So
Yeah.
they really just need to get some more talent in there. And I think when they get that infusion of talent from the recruiting standpoint, I mean, who knows, man? I think Florida isn't, I honestly think they're not that far away from being an 8-9 win team.
I would agree, but the game management stuff just really needs to be cleaned up. But I do agree with you. The recruiting definitely is a better indicator of where you're going as a program than not. All right. Well, hey, credit to Missouri though. Missouri, what are they 9-2 right now? Like, and they got to play
Yeah, they're killing it.
Arkansas.
They're
They
killing
might
it.
finish 10-2.
They probably will. Arkansas's bad.
So kudos to them, man. That's a good team. We can't move on from the SEC without bringing this one up. Auburn 10, New Mexico State 31. New Mexico State.
Tell me you completely didn't watch New Mexico State tape and sold for the Iron Bowl without telling me you completely didn't watch any New Mexico State tape and just sold for the Iron Bowl. 31-10? Like, come on.
This is such an Auburn move right here. Like, that is exactly what happened. There's just no excuse. I mean, Auburn only ran for Auburn 65 on the cover, yards.
Man. They put everything in the AK, bro, and they are just gonna unload it in the Iron Bowl. Like they didn't even prepare for this fight, man. They didn't even prepare. They said, that's fine. We'll retreat. We'll give up this trench. We're going to unload on the next one.
They just like didn't show up. Like I know we say that a lot. Like, oh yeah, they just didn't show up. Like they actually did not show up. New Mexico State had 414 yards. Auburn only had 212. New Mexico State had 2 times the amount of total yards. Like they legitimately didn't show up. They legitimately like said, yeah, we're not going to try today.
Too many phone calls on the landline, you know.
Dude, And you know what this means? Wouldn't it be hilarious? This is the best part about college football is that despite what just happened last week, you know for a fact that Auburn is gonna like put their heart and soul into the black magic voodoo. They're gonna unleash that on Alabama next week.
Auburn knows that they can end Alabama's season effectively next season. If they
Yeah.
beat Alabama next week, Alabama is not going to the playoffs, even if they beat Georgia. Like it's too heavy at the top. Like there's no way. You beat Alabama next week, even if they beat Georgia, they're out. There's no way.
I think if you ask any Auburn fan, if you tell them, hey, what will it take to beat Alabama? And if you say you're gonna have to get like completely embarrassed by New Mexico State in order to beat Alabama in the
They would
Iron
say
Bowl,
yes.
they would say yes. So
And that's kind of the equation for Bedlam, man. Hey, you have to get embarrassed by South Alabama, but you'll beat OU.
and
Okay.
UCF. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
yes, you take that. It's hate. This is it's rivalries, man. Rivalries is what makes the sport great. So yes, I think if anything,
Especially
this
if it means you keep your
performance,
rival out of the championship, or not out of the
yes,
championship, but out of like the playoffs or anything.
for some weird reason, like this performance almost made me more confident in Auburn's chances in the Iron Bowl.
That's
Like
what I'm telling you, man. Like they just completely sold. Like they're just spending 2 weeks preparing for the Iron Bowl.
like they spent this entire week at practice preparing for Alabama, and just didn't show up. Just said screw it,
They
we
showed
don't
up at the
care.
game day. They're like, okay, guys, I didn't for Bama. Just go out there and like play flag football, and we'll see if we win. Like,
Oh man, oh man, good stuff. All right, let's head out to the Big Ten, last Power Five conference before we move on here. Michigan 31, Maryland 24. Was not able to watch this one, but Michigan kind of got away with one here, man. They had a couple special teams and defensive scores in this
yep.
game.
Michigan. This is my biggest criticism of Michigan. They finally played a team that has a pulse on offense, that actually has like a decent offense, and they struggled. They almost lost the game. And this is why I don't think. Look, I think Michigan's a good team. I think they're a top 10 team. I don't think they're a top 4 college football playoff team.
No.
I legitimately don't think so. Um, Even if they beat Ohio State, I think that's just a great matchup for them. Like it's just one of those games you play for. Michigan is just the beneficiary of a cakewalk schedule. But I will say, you can only play who's in front of you. Michigan's schedule next year actually looks pretty dang tough. But this year, Michigan, I don't know, man. I just cannot get behind. I know they're undefeated. I just can't get behind them. This is the one time they played a good offense or a decent offense, and they almost lost.
You don't think Penn State's offense is
No,
well? I know they didn't play well
no.
against Michigan, Ohio State, but
Penn
I
State,
mean,
I mean, Penn State is good at beating the rum dums. Like, because Penn State has a really good defense. So even when their offense doesn't perform, their defense gets enough stops to where their offense can eventually score enough to make it look like they're beating people very lopsidedly. Which, I mean, technically in the day you are, but their offense isn't prolific. Penn State's offense is not prolific.
no, I agree with
And
that.
but
Yeah,
their defense is amazing, and I grant them that. But that's the only reason that they are that third best team. Their offense has to take that next step to contest Ohio State and Michigan, and they just never do. So,
I
yeah,
will say I think that we're gonna find out, and it's probably gonna rear its ugly head in bowl season. But like outside of the Big Three, the Big Ten, like Maryland is like the one. Like okay, that might actually be like an okay middle team. But behind them, it's like the rest of the Big Ten is like really bad.
pretty terrible. Yeah,
It
like the Big
really
Ten
is,
is really
man.
bad this year. Iowa's coming out of the West. And I know Iowa's what 9-2, but they're not even good.
No, I mean Penn State beat Iowa 30-0 in week 3. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the bit yeah, I think we talked about this once. I think we said like if you put Maryland in the Big Ten West, like Maryland probably wins the Big Ten West.
They probably would.
Yeah, I mean, if you threw like I'm trying to just think of a random team off the top of my head, like if you threw a Virginia Tech or a even like how about this? How about this one? Texas Tech. You throw Texas Tech in the Big Ten West. I think
They're
they
going to
might win the.
finish in the top two. Yeah,
I think they'd probably win. I think they could win the division.
yeah,
Like
they
I'm
could.
just thinking of random teams off the top of my head, but yeah, it's a terrible division. And really, the conference is bad. And the point is here, I'm trying to make is like Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan. They all beat up on these bad teams, but it's like you don't really know how good they really are until we get to the playoffs because you just There's
And
not enough
that's why
sample size.
that's why I'm so critical of Michigan, man, because same thing last year. And then as soon as they played a decent team in the playoffs, TCU, everyone thought they were much better because on paper Michigan was much better. But they're used to being up all these rum dums in the Big Ten, and they always get up to play against Ohio State and Penn State because those are the only two games they know they have to win every year. And then boom, they lose to freaking TCU. I'm just saying, if they played more competent teams, I think Michigan would lose 2-3 games a year consistently.
Yeah, I'm starting to lean in that direction because if you look up like national leaders right now in total defense, the top 3 teams in total defense, Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State. If you look
Yeah,
up national
the
leaders in
worst
yards,
offenses,
yeah, yards per play allowed.
the Big
Number
Ten.
1, Ohio State, Iowa, Penn State, Michigan. That's like literally the top 4. It probably means it's the Big Ten being really, really bad that is inflating these stats. That's how I look at it. I think that's
I
the
think
only
you're
answer
100% right.
because there's
Look,
no way that the
I think
best
those
3
defenses.
defenses. Go ahead.
I think those defenses are fantastic, and I completely agree with you on that. But yeah, I agree with you that there's no way that they're that
Yeah.
good.
There's
It's
no way
definitely
that
there's
the right.
mhm.
There's no way that the
It's
top 3
conflated.
defenses in the country are all in the same conference.
Yeah, it's conflated by how bad the rest of the conference is. I mean, when you have Iowa in your freaking conference, that's just a guaranteed plus like 30 in your ranking right there immediately.
No kidding, man. Yeah, I think it doesn't get talked enough about, but next year that might change when the Big Ten adds Oregon, Washington, and all of them. I think it'll get better, and just the money that's going to be pumped into that conference, they will get better
The Big
by
Ten
default.
will be a good conference next year.
But yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
really it's really
They
not
will
a
be
great
good
game.
next year.
Well, speaking of Iowa, they beat Illinois 15-13. I watched this game. I took the over in this game like a complete idiot. I was trying to play like 3D chess when all I had to do was just play simple checkers and probably could have picked the right side here. I don't know what I was thinking. I mean, honestly,
I
Illinois
told you you
should have
deserve your
won this
failure on
game.
this one.
I'm gonna go Illinois homer mode here. For the Illinois fans that are watching, Illinois should have won this game, man. Y'all should have won this game. And I'm not saying that because I'm salty. I'm saying that because I watched it and I objectively think Illinois should have won this game, but Iowa did what Iowa did.
Dude, they started the game with a freaking safety.
Of course they did. And then they won by Iowa, 2 points. Man. And they won by 2. That safety was the difference.
It's fucking it's Iowa, dude. Like, it's amazing. It never fails. The black magic voodoo to win games. It's insane. It's like 3 years now, consistently.
And Iowa gets to sit back this week versus Nebraska and probably might lose to Nebraska, but they don't care because they get to sit back and be like, all right, Michigan, Ohio State, you two duke it out. We'll see you in the Big Ten championship game. They clinched the West last week with that win. So it's only fitting, dude. It is only fitting in the final year of the Big Ten West that Iowa wins it. And
with the safety.
With a safety. With a safety. And they're going to lose like 40-3 in the Big Ten championship game.
Hey, shoot, I'm pretty sure. Let's give Iowa some credit. I think they scored 2 offensive touchdowns in that game.
You think so?
I'm pretty sure they did.
Oh,
they
in the Illinois game.
In the Illinois game, yeah.
No, they only scored 1, I think.
Are you sure? I swear they had a run and a pass. Didn't they have 16?
They had a run. I saw the run at the end in the fourth quarter there.
I'm pretty sure they had 2 touchdowns.
Let me verify this right here. You could be right because I think. Oh, you're right. They did because they missed the PAT. They missed the PAT there.
Missed the PAT.
Yeah.
Oh my god, man! Their defense is better at getting the extra points than their freaking kicker.
Yeah, it's man. If you just like to sit back and watch that brand of football, then it is the team to watch for you. And also, I just wanted to shout out really quick another Big Ten West game here. Northwestern beat Purdue 23-15. Buddy, Northwestern is 6-5. They're bowl eligible.
And
how?
Braun is now the head coach. He's no longer an interim.
That's
He's
right.
been promoted.
I forgot to mention that. That's right.
Honestly, he deserves it. How do you take this
absolutely.
dumpster fire and get into a bowl game?
Absolutely. I mean, they play Illinois for the Land of Lincoln Trophy this week, rivalry week. I mean, they might beat it. They have a chance to beat Illinois. They could finish 7-5 with a winning record. That seems
Northwestern
absolutely
is
impossible.
so weird, man. That program can go 1-11 and then go 11-1 the next season. It just makes no sense.
I mean, if they had if Iowa had lost today to Illinois, Northwestern, I think still would have been in play for the Big Ten West. Like, it would have been unlikely, but they still would have been like mathematically alive somehow. So
Yeah, that just tells you about the West.
exactly. How about some G5 games really quick? I thought I'd run through this. The Mountain West is actually very interesting, man. So for those of you who don't really follow G5, I think the conference championship games in a few of these conferences it's actually really interesting. Starting with the Mountain West. So you got UNLV, who picked up a huge win against Air Force. I mean, we talked about UNLV a lot. I feel like Barry Odom, head coach there, like, he's doing a phenomenal job at UNLV. Like we said multiple times, they weren't even projected to make a bowl game this year. They are now in sole possession of first place in the Mountain West. I don't think they've clinched their spot yet, but they just need to win their game or have one of the other two teams in contention lose, and they're in. And they most likely are in, because they have a head-to-head over Air Force as well. And Air Force and Boise State are playing each other, so that potentially could be a de facto playing game this week. And then San Jose State, I'm not sure if they're in the mix or not, but San Jose State's like that team, kind of like Kansas State in the Big 12. They're still mathematically alive, but very unlikely to get in. So that's very interesting.
Hey, UNLV was Michigan's best win this year, so.
All right, let's be honest here with us for a second. If you were the committee, and obviously Penn State's the best win. I mean, come on, Penn State's the best win. But if you were to remove Penn State, who is Michigan's best win?
UNLV.
I mean, I was thinking about that. I'm like, I think it is UNLV. It is. That might be a conference champion team. Oh man. But anyhow, yeah, we'll see how that plays out. It'll be very interesting. UNLV, I think, very likely will get in. And then the AAC championship game, you have three teams at the top of the standings. You have SMU 7-0, Tulane 7-0, UTSA 7-0. Oh, and by the way, Tulane and UTSA play each other this week, and we're going to be picking that game. So that is what could be a de facto playing game for the championship. And then SMU plays a complete scrub team. I don't have it off the top of my head, but SMU likely is in. So it is likely, not official, but likely to be SMU versus the winner of Tulane and UTSA in the championship game. Yeah, SMU plays Navy, so at home. So that should be a dub. Sunbelt, you have Troy, who clinched already. Troy clinched the West Division. Big that was a nice draft pick for you in the team draft. They locked up the West Division. They locked that up like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And then they're going to play the winner of, well, they're going to play either Coastal, Appalachian State, or Old Dominion. I think Old Dominion
should be JMU, but
well, yeah, should be JMU, but App State can get in. Coastal just needs to win, but App State wins and Coastal loses, App State is in. And then Old Dominion, I think, has an outside chance, but I'm not sure. I need some more information on all these tiebreakers, man. The conferences need to do what the Pac-12 did. They put out an official statement on their Twitter saying, of all the scenarios, I'm like, the conferences would just do this. That'd be nice. And then the MAC is already wrapped up. The MAC championship game is going to be Toledo versus Miami, Ohio. And then the CUSA title game will be Liberty versus New Mexico State. So New Mexico State just says, yeah, we beat Auburn. Now we're going to play Liberty for the CUSA. So good season for them. All right. Well, you want to talk about some playoff? What do you want to go here? We want to talk some playoff scenarios?
This can get really bad, man, because we're not going to have 1 or 2 teams dying on a hill here. There's the potential to have like 4 or 5 teams dying on a hill here. Let me paint the absolute worst DEFCON, everyone's got nukes pointed at each other scenario right now. Okay, 12-1. Okay, so let me just say this. You have to pick 4 teams that are in, and you have to, out of these groups, you have to pick who's in, okay? 12-1 conference champion Texas, 12-1 conference champion Alabama, assuming they beat Georgia in the SEC championship, which makes Georgia 12-1.
Right.
Michigan 12-1, who loses, Ohio, say Michigan beats Ohio State this season, And actually, no, I'm sorry. This is completely wrong. But let's say a 12-1 Michigan or Ohio State. Okay, conference
Was it? What do they
champion.
lose to Iowa in the conference championship? That's the only way.
Well, let's say they would lose to.
That's they only play. They only play each other and then Iowa.
You're
So
right. You're right. So Michigan or Ohio State would be a lock because they would
no.
basically be
The
undefeated.
winner of Michigan Ohio State's going to the playoff because they're going to be 13-0
Yeah.
because they're going to
So,
Iowa's not beating them.
so let me start this hypothetical again. So you're going to have a 13-0 Ohio State or Michigan. That'll be a lock, whoever that is, because that will be the only like true bona fide undefeated team in
Unless
this
Iowa
particular
wins.
scenario that I'm
Counting
proposing.
out
here.
Iowa.
You have a 12-1.
I'm kidding. I said you're counting out Iowa like that. I'm kidding. They're going to lose by 50.
Hey, I mean, they could pull some voodoo, man.
They're going to lose by
voodoo.
50. They're going to lose by 50.
You have 12-1 conference champion Texas, 12-1 conference champion Bama, 12-1 UGA runner-up, undefeated Michigan or Ohio State, and then the other one is 12-1, and then 12-1 Washington, 12-1 Oregon, who is a conference champion, beats Washington in the rematch.
Yep.
12-1 Louisville, who beats FSU in the ACC championship. 12-1 FSU because FSU just lost their quarterback. So now we've got a lot of 12-1 teams, and the only guarantee is that the winner of that Big Ten championship, which is going to be Ohio State or Michigan, is in. So only one spot is locked here. Who's in? Who's out?
Yes. So I think I can narrow this down a good bit here. So I think total that's 10 teams in play here, right?
Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's 8 to 9 because we're doing Michigan, Ohio State. So 9.
All right. Well, we already know the winner, Michigan, Ohio State, will beat Iowa by 40 points, and then
they'll be in, and they'll probably be the 1 seed.
So that's one spot. If Louisville goes 12-1, beats Florida State, I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah,
Florida State, that would be completely devastating. But Florida State will be out. Schedule just not good enough. And then Louisville, I'm sorry, guys. Same reason. Like you're not going to get in. Like Louisville needs absolute like nuclear chaos in order to get into the college football playoff. They're going to give it a run for its money, but they're not getting in. So I think either ACC team is out. The loser of Michigan and Ohio State, I think, is out. Like you can't put one of those two teams in. Like they've just been, the schedule is just not good enough. Ohio State, you might have an argument because they beat Notre Dame, but Notre Dame win doesn't look like as good anymore. So I don't think you can put them out there. So you can eliminate the loser of Michigan, Ohio State. So what does that leave? That leaves Bama, Georgia.
That leaves conference champion Texas, conference champion Bama, conference champion Oregon, runner-up UGA, runner-up Washington State, all 12-1. I mean, runner-up Washington, all 12-1.
So now we have 3 spots remaining in the playoff with 5 teams left that we haven't eliminated.
Yep.
See this is where I think it gets tough. So the huge wrench that's like hanging up the machine right now is the Texas over Bama win from week 2. Like that is really throwing some stuff off because if you were to just omit Texas beating Alabama, it's like not even a question. Bama would get in. But in Texas' schedule, like if you take out that win, Texas' schedule isn't really that great.
Yeah, and then you have the Bama head-to-head over UGA in this particular scenario. So this would automatically bump UGA down 2 spots.
See, this is why if this happens, like I don't know what the committee is going to do because Georgia would still have a decent resume, but they wouldn't have a conference championship. All right,
but Washington and Oregon would both have amazing resumes. Because the thing, here's my thing: what if Alabama, Oregon, and Washington both 12-1? They both have incredible resumes. One of them's going to get left out, and they've beaten each other.
All right. Well, let's just say this: I think if I'm going to say they put the conference champions in, I think Oregon and Bama are in.
Okay.
I think Oregon and Bama are in.
Which means the biggest problem, they would have to put Texas in because Texas beat Bama and they're a conference champion.
That's what I'm thinking. But then again, they can also say, okay, well, yeah, Texas had the head-to-head, but Bama won the SEC. So they have a conference championship that's elevating them. But then again, Texas also would have a conference championship. Oof.
Yeah,
Man,
so
this
that
is
means
just tough, but I think
so
they would put in
so if this
Texas.
happened,
I think they'd put
yeah,
in
so
Texas.
if they would do anything, I feel like they might just go with conference champions. They would pick
I agree.
Oregon, so it would be one seed. It would be one seed,
Michigan or Ohio State.
Michigan or Ohio State. Then you'd have a two seed of probably Oregon,
I'd say
and
Oregon.
then a three
Yeah.
seed of Texas, and then Bama would be four.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you'd have Texas, Oregon in round one, and then Bama and Michigan or Ohio State in the first round, which would be pretty amazing. That'd be an
And
amazing first
then
round,
Georgia and Washington get left out when
which is not fair at
very
all.
both of them would be very deserving.
Yeah, like Georgia and
Yeah.
Washington, you like leaving them out. Like they should both. They're both playoff teams.
See, that would be like the committee's nightmare scenario. But then I'm looking at the Jordan Travis injury now, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, Tate Rodemaker's the backup. What if Florida State is able to skate by, beat Florida, and then somehow skate by and beat Louisville? And it's
Yeah.
like
So
clearly they're not the same team that they were, but they still finished 13 and 0.
let's change this up. Let's change this scenario real quick, Shub. Let's change the scenario. FSU rights the ship with backup quarterback. FSU wins the ACC, finishes 13 and 0. You have to put him in. You
It's
have
just
to.
tough because it's like FSU might be
I know, but you
clearly
can't just
showing
say
they're not as good anymore, but they still.
I know.
Yeah.
I understand.
Oh,
I understand the logic behind it, but you can't just say, "Oh,
no,
sorry, you lost your quarterback. I know you're undefeated, but I
you
can't
can't
put you
do
in."
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
you can't do
you'd
that.
have to put
them.
Florida State in. You would have
Oh,
to, even though everyone knows they would get trounced, and Florida State
right.
would get in over a lot of teams who would arguably trounce them without Jordan Travis.
Oh, see, this
And
is why it's
and
the
so you would
most
automatically
deserving.
have
Yep.
yeah, you would have Ohio State or Michigan. You would have Florida State. And then one conference champion is going to get left out. Conference champion Bama, conference champion Texas, conference champion Oregon. Someone's getting left out. It would probably be Alabama because Texas has the head to head. So it would probably be Oregon at the 3 and Texas at the 4 and Bama's out.
Oh, but man, like but
No SEC representative. That would be nuts.
yeah, but man, I don't know though, man, because the problem with Bama and Texas is like Texas Bama's if Bama beats Georgia, like their resume is going to be way better than Texas overall. But it's like
I
that
know, but
one
this is where it
loss
comes into
is-
play. Like,
Ugh,
what does the committee value more? And it was in Tuscaloosa too. It's not like it was in Austin.
right. And
They beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa.
and would sound like a hypocrite because even though I'm saying Bama probably is the better resume, I also think like you can't set the precedent of like not counting what happens on the field. Like you have to have these games that are actually played head to head matter. You know what I mean? Like we play the
Otherwise,
games
there's
for a
no
reason.
point in having them. Yeah.
Right, exactly. We play the games for a reason. You have to honor what happened on the field and reward teams for actually winning the games by merit.
In this
Oh,
scenario, Shu, let's just pick a winner, a random winner. Sorry, Ohio State or Michigan fan. Just picking one, not saying you're going to lose, just picking one for the sake of the argument. I'm going to pick Ohio State. So say we have Ohio State at the 1, FSU at the 2, the only two undefeated teams. So
I'd say they might drop FSU to like 4. Like they might put FSU
even at
in.
undefeated,
Yeah, maybe not.
I feel like they would put them at 2 just by like a conference champion and undefeated, even if Jordan Travis is out.
Because then
They would do
everybody
it out
else
of
would
like
have one
respect.
loss. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And then that means the only other options, if we're going by 12-1 conference champions, Texas, Bama, Oregon, you can't leave Oregon out. They're just too dang good.
No.
You can't leave them out. You have to put them in.
I
And
think
then
no
that only
matter
leaves
what
one spot,
happens,
Texas or Bama. So it's literally
Right.
this could, if this scenario plays out, there is no SEC representative in the college football playoff for the first time in like ever.
and it would be nuts because the SEC champion would have like might
One
have
loss.
like one of the best resumes too, and not
Yep.
and still not get in.
Yep. You would have both Alabama, Washington, and Georgia all with one loss. Oh, and Michigan. 4 teams with one loss, not in the playoffs.
Yeah, man. There's just no way somebody doesn't get screwed over this year. Like somebody
No,
is going to.
there's
get
going to
screwed
be
over.
like at least 2 to 4 teams that get completely screwed this year.
Ugh, yeah. The whole Jordan Travis thing for Florida State like really just throws a wrench in everything right now because then like we just said, it's like you have to honor what Florida State has done and they deserve to be in, but you also know you're also putting in a team that's not going to put out the greatest product in the actual playoff over a team that would put up a way better fight and still is deserving.
And I gotta say, if Jordan Travis is out for, did they say he's like out, like he's
Oh,
done?
dude, oh yeah, dude, he's done for the year. I mean, I'm worried about like a lot of people are worried about like his career. Like, is this going to be an injury that lingers for the rest of his career? It's a bad
You know,
situation,
with
dude.
that Jordan Travis injury, like it sucks for FSU, but just for the sake of being a college football purist, I don't want to see FSU in the playoff. I really hope they lose to either Florida or Louisville. And
I think the committee does too.
that's not me just like, yeah,
I think the
because
committee is really going to be pulling for Florida and Louisville because they don't want to be put in that position, dude.
could you imagine that though? Like, could you imagine putting a team that you know is going to get absolutely annihilated in the first game when you had to leave out like three or four other teams who would have put up really good fights?
Dude, I yeah, I don't envy being in the committee's position this year. I'll put it that way.
Dude,
I
but I will say, aside like say Florida State doesn't make it, no matter what matchup you slate up here, it's going to be an amazing matchup in every game.
So I'm trying to think of something like I think if I will say this, if you are lucky or fortunate enough to get into the playoff this year, you're probably if there's one team that you're like, I kind of hope we draw that team. I feel like you're hoping that you draw Florida State. Like if you're at these other contenders, I think maybe you're hoping that Florida State wins out and gets in, and then you're like, oh, I hope we play Florida State because we're going to play them without their best player or one of their best players, and, at the most important position, and you probably get a Florida State team with one hand tied behind its back, and then can go to the national championship game. You know, I think that's like what you're rooting for. But then again, at the same time, Florida State winning out is also going to knock somebody out that definitely deserves to be in, as we've just been talking about. So it's a kind of a hand in hand
No matter
situation there.
what, man, no matter what, multiple teams are going to get the short side this season. Multiple teams.
Well, I think no matter what, the Pac-12 champion has to get in. Like,
Yeah,
assuming
for
it's
sure.
Oregon, Washington. Like, there is a chance. Like, if Oregon just implodes, loses
Arizona
the
could
Civil
sneak in.
War,
Yeah.
Arizona gets in, they win the Pac-12, then yeah, the Pac-12. Sorry, you're not getting in. But that's not going to happen. Like, I don't think so.
I know the committee would love that. Make their job easier.
It would, but there's just, especially if it's a one-loss Oregon, they have to be in. And then if you're an undefeated Washington, it's not even a question they're in. Washington's resume is very good right now.
It is, and that's
Washington
what sucks,
should
man.
be
Because
ranked ahead of Michigan.
if Washington, they should absolutely. If Washington loses to Oregon in the championship game, it's like no, Washington. Despite how amazing their resume is, they're still not going to get in the playoffs.
That would be a sham. I mean, I'm trying to think what would have to happen for both Washington and Oregon to get in. Now let's
Uh,
be obviously this means
Bama would have to
Oregon
lose the
beats
Iron Bowl.
Washington.
Bama
Yeah.
would have to lose the Iron Bowl and beat Georgia. Um, and
So Bama basically implodes and takes Georgia down
and
into the
Texas would have
canyon
to
with them.
lose the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, you're right. I think so.
That's
And
the
then
only way both
obviously
Pac-12
Florida
teams get
State.
in. And Florida
Right.
State would have to lose a game. Yeah, it's the only way both Pac-12 teams get in.
What about both Big Ten teams, Michigan, Ohio State? I think this is far, far less
I
likely,
think
but
I think
there
the
would need
only
to
way
be
that
a chaos.
happens, I think the only way that happens is if there's chaos, like Texas loses, Bama loses the Iron Bowl, same scenario, but they beat Georgia, um, and then maybe Washington slips up in the Apple Cup or something, and then Oregon beats them, and then if that happens, and the winner of Michigan and Ohio State is Michigan because Michigan has a weak schedule, then and it's close, then Ohio State might be able to justify a 4 spot. Or they wouldn't. They would probably put them at 3 because they wouldn't do a rematch. But yeah,
Yeah. Man, it's making my head explode thinking about these scenarios.
it's nuts, man. I'll tell you what. This next week, these next couple weeks are going to be
Yeah.
crazy to monitor. Crazy.
They are. Yeah,
So much on the line.
we've all been kind of waiting for like this season. I think a lot of people have said like this season might have a 2007 vibes to it. It definitely hasn't played out that way, but if we're going to get any sort of like reminisce of that, I think it would be rivalry week, like being a nuclear bomb going off, and like you said, Alabama losing the Iron Bowl, like all these crazy upsets that nobody sees coming, all happening at once.
Dude, I gotta tell you, man. I hope It's like a win-win and a lose-lose for me. I hope for the sake of seeing what the hell the committee would do that one of these two scenarios that we painted out happens. But for the sake of these teams and these programs, and like, because I've loved watching these teams throughout the whole year, I hope it doesn't happen. I hope someone does implode. That way, someone is deservingly left out. So either way, I'm gonna win and lose. But man, I'm curious, man. I'm curious to see how it's gonna shake out this year. Like an 18 playoff would be so perfect this year.
It would be, and it definitely would be. There's some years where just certain numbers I feel like would make sense this year. An
I think
expanded
if you're gonna
playoff
expand
would
it, do
make
eight.
sense.
Don't do 12. Do eight. Do five highest rated conference champions. So if they want to throw a G5 team in there, if they're rated high enough, five highest rated conference champions, and then three highest rated at large,
Yeah,
and make
I
the
would like
first
that.
round on campus.
I would love that. Yeah, I agree with that, man. Oof, this is it's really making me excited, but I also, there's certain teams I want to see. And like personally, I've watched, like you were saying, I like how you said you've watched all these teams all year and you want to see them in, on the biggest stage in the playoff. Well, I've watched so much Pac-12 this year. I think we all have. I've watched so much Pac-12
They've been a
this year.
great conference to watch this year.
Yeah, I want to see Oregon, Washington in that dang playoff, man. Like I want to see them in there playing one of the big dogs. And unlikely, but there's a chance we might get to see both of them in there. I wouldn't be. I think both of them definitely deserve to be in there because the Pac-12 has been legitimately good, and they
Dude,
both have the resume.
do you think George Klyavkov would kill himself if like Oregon and Washington both made the playoffs and then beat the teams that they played and played in the championship game?
and then Oregon State and Wazoo get all the revenue from that.
Yeah. And then like but then like if that happened, you could argue that the Pac-12 was far and away the best conference that year, but Klyavkov pissed it away.
That would be the biggest. I don't even know. That would be the biggest like slap
Biggest
in
business
the face.
blunder everywhere, like ever. Like
Yeah, like they'll talk about that as a case study in MBA classes for the rest of the
they
time.
probably already do, man. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
they probably
It's up
will.
there
They
now.
probably already do. but yes, I agree. If it's just the irony of this sport, bro, the fact that the Pac-12 is having probably one of its best seasons ever, and it's the same year that the conference completely implodes and everybody leaves. It's just I swear, man, if you don't believe in God,
The way things
God
go.
is watching over this sport because the way that this
And
is
he doesn't like
played
George
out.
Klyavkov.
No, he does not. I mean, George Kulovkov, like what do you think that man's been doing all year? Like ever since everybody left, what has he had to do? Oregon State and Wazoo have been basically holding up these meetings. So, they've gone through that legal battle to hold up these meetings so that way nobody can vote on anything so they don't get screwed over. So Klyovkov is like, well, if I can't like conduct any of these meetings or just facilitate any business, like what the hell do I do? Like that dude's probably been like golfing and
They
skiing.
have him with the sippy cup in the corner at the kids' table.
Yeah,
They
that man
say,
doesn't
"Here,
have to do
Georgie, go
anything.
sit over there. We'll let the adults talk now."
Seriously though, man, like he's just been sitting back, just probably golfing like for the last 6 months. I don't know I don't know what he
Yeah,
does. he can't
that's probably
facilitate or manage a
exactly what
league
he's
because the league
doing.
doesn't exist anymore.
He's
So
probably doing exactly what you mentioned. He's just getting better on the greens.
yeah, well, I think we talked a lot about playoff, man. I think we'll have a slightly clearer picture after this weekend, but even after this weekend, I don't know if it's going to get that much clearer. I really don't think it will. I think conference championship week is what's going to make it. Maybe we'll have a better picture, but we'll see. Well, do we want to get to Shuby snacks and Zanny bars? I just want to give out.
We can. Go ahead
Yeah,
and give some out.
I want to give out one, and I think one is got to go to Chip Kelly. Because listen, man, I don't like it when schools or universities just leak out rumors that Chip Kelly may be leaving or being fired. Like I don't like when they leak out the rumors that they might be fired when the coach hasn't been fired. Like that's just a lose-lose. Like how are you supposed to like how does Chip Kelly respond to that? Maybe they told Chip Kelly internally like, "Hey man, we're going to let you go." And then they let out the rumor and maybe out of respect haven't officially let him go. And I know why they do it. Like the reason why they do it and they leak it out is because they want other prospective coaches to know ahead of time that the job is open. so that way they can do their, backdoor communication and see who's interested and whatnot. That's what they all do. So it's basically just like poaching, except, it's basically poaching, but at the coaching level, also in the transfer portal, or tampering, I should say, not poaching. It's basically tampering. Yeah. But anyways, I think Chip Kelly deserved a Shooby snack, man. Like, he went in there to the Coliseum, beat the brakes off of USC in a rivalry game. And my honest opinion, I know that the Chip Kelly news broke after we recorded last week, so we didn't get to talk about it. But my opinion back then, regardless of what had happened this week, I would have told you last week, even before this USC game, I would have said, I think that's the wrong move. I don't think, like, how much better is UCLA going to do than Chip Kelly? I don't know how much better they can do than that.
They obviously must have their eyes set on somebody, but I couldn't for the life of me tell you who it's going to be. It's kind of hard to, I feel like it's hard to draw recruits without paying them, because to UCLA and USC specifically, it's so hard for them to fill half their stadium, even when they're decent, So imagine when they're not good.
Right. And then they're going into the Big Ten, where they're going to be even more bogged down with more teams ahead of them that have better programs. I just don't know where does UCLA fall in the new Big Ten pecking order? Like, they're definitely not in the tier 1. They're definitely, tier 2.
It's probably the second tier.
But
they'd be there with like the Iowas and Wisconsins.
And I know Chip Kelly is notoriously, like, he doesn't really care for the whole hoopla and getting the fans riled up and, being a guy that, like, connects with the fan base and doesn't necessarily care about recruiting. Like, he doesn't really care about that stuff. And I get that. There's a lot of coaches out there like that. But the problem is, like, if you're like a Mike Gundy, you can do that because, like, Oklahoma State fans are going to show up and be loyal. Kyle Willingham could completely neglect the fans. The fans are still going to show up. Any Nebraska coach out there can completely neglect the fan base, and they're still going to show up. But when you're in LA, if you neglect the fan base, they're not going to show up because they don't care. They have a lot of other stuff they can do in LA.
You could be 8-1 and they still won't show up.
Exactly. I mean, and I'm just looking at UCLA. Like, UCLA went 9-3 last year. Like, they were in the Pac-12 championship race up until the very end. This is one of those scenarios where I'm like, you get rid of Chip Kelly, like, I get it. It's stale. You want somebody new in there that's going to do stuff differently. But at the end of the day, would you rather have Chip Kelly, who's winning 8, 9, 10 games a year, but doesn't care about recruiting or connecting with the fans? Or would you rather have a guy that's all rah, like, connects with the fan base, yada, yada. Maybe he gets a few more butts in the seats, but is going 6-6. Like, I don't know. That's kind of how I feel about it. But hey, he gets a Shooby snack though.
Well, let's jump into picks, Shoob.
All right.
Actually,
that's
right. I forgot we're doing that. I got one Zanny bar. Dude, Auburn.
Oh yeah, that's easy.
Enough said.
That's a slam dunk.
Enough said. Yeah, Auburn. Bam. Zanny bar, dude. Like, how do you bam? Like, how do you not get a Zanny bar? Auburn. How do you get trounced by 21 points to New Mexico State? Like, I know they're a decent team this year, but God, man, the recruiting discrepancy and talent discrepancy, there's no excuse, man. Like,
yeah, but exactly. Like, we say like decent team. We say like decent team in relative to Conference USA, which is like a complete dog water. It's like the worst FBS conference. Like, it's all relative. Like, I don't care who you are. You should be beating any CUSA team by 3 touchdowns. And I mean, New Mexico State, like, they almost got relegated to the FCS. Like, that program was dead. Thank God they got Jerry Kill in there, man, because Jerry Kill is like, that man could win at like an Alaska school. They could plug a program up in Alaska and they'd win 8 games a year. Like, that man just wins at the worst programs ever. So yeah, that is a slam dunk Zanny bar.
And one more Zanny bar. I'll throw it out for good faith. Baylor's football season. Holy crap, man. I felt pretty good. I felt pretty confident. Like, you can go back. I said I was confident in the Baylor under 7.5 or 7, whatever it was. But I wasn't, like, I didn't think they were going to be this bad. I was thinking Baylor's going to be 5, maybe 6 wins. This is like terrible. Aranda, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if he's just lost interest in coaching or whatever the case may be. But man, that program has taken, ever since the upsetting my Pokes in that championship game, they have just boom, just crashed completely.
I'd say like of all the programs or of all like the coaching tenures that have taken turns over the last couple of years, Dave Aranda going from that 2021 season where they won the Big 12, beat Ole Miss in the Cotton Bowl or the Sugar Bowl, whatever, going from that to where they are now, like Dave Aranda, we love Dave Aranda too. Like I just did not think that was even possible. Like the bottom would fall out. Yeah, it's been like easily probably the most shocking results like over the last 2 years is Baylor with Dave Aranda. I would agree. That's a Zanny bar. Any honorary Gonzo grudges real quick? I don't know if I have any.
I don't have any honorary Gonzo grudges, but I do have an honorary Shuby snack. Come on, man. Bo Nix?
Oh yeah. Well, yeah.
Oh my God, man.
Yeah.
The numbers he put up in just one half, though, like that's incredible.
I mean, I could be giving out Shuby snacks to Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels every week. But I know, you're right.
My God, man, the fact that he did that in one half is just crazy to me.
Yeah, it is insane. That Heisman race is going to be very interesting.
Zanny bar to App State for beating my JMU Dukes.
Shuby snack to App State because I might get an extra point that I didn't think I otherwise would have had in the team draft. All right, you ready to get into picks? Let's
grab it. Let's get it.
Let's do it. All right. That'll wrap it up for week 12 recap. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. So without further ado, that is Zan. I'm Shub. And we will see you for week 13 picks coming up in the next video. Thank you all for watching. Thanks for listening. Signing out. See y'all later and enjoy your college football Saturday.